very serious.
Very serious.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming today. We really appreciate it. I'd like to have a call to order. The order is called, I guess. Confirmation of quorum and proper notice of the meeting. Megan, please.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Consent of meeting minutes from 3/7/2022. Any questions regarding the meeting minutes?
No question.
Edits, audits? Given that, may I get a motion to approve those minutes? So moved. Excellent. Second. Meeting minutes have been approved accordingly.
I'm sorry, who made the motion? Brad?
Anderson seconded it. Hope that was recorded effectively. Approval of claims, of 4/11/2022. We discussed the claims?
Yeah, I believe the case in the map, you guys? The case in the map, you guys?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I'm looking at it. I don't
Where's the
look
link?
at it. Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, nothing too crazy, mostly just rent, like when the build out rent, there's the balance, other than that, just rent professional fees.
Okay. Motion to approve said claims? So moved.
I'll second.
We have a second. We're banging this out. Thank you. Appreciate it. Claims approved. Any questions? Oh, well, we've already moved on from that.
Did you call for the full order? Be sure to call for the vote.
Oh, yeah, I'm not calling for the vote. I apologize. May I have all in favor say aye?
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Things have been approved. Let's do the same on the meeting minutes. All in favor of those meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Second, again, same sign. Meeting minutes have been approved. So we're going to have a public hearing on number 5 here, which is a confirmation or confirmatory resolution FRC 01R041122 for Highline allocation area. So we are open with a public meeting,
Public hearing.
excuse me.
There's no members of the public online or in person.
Okay. So I can close the public hearing, correct? So the public hearing is closed. Do we need to discuss?
This is, you already approved the declaratory resolution for the Highline project. This is just the four steps of creating allocation area. This is just the fourth step.
Okay, fourth step. All right. Any questions, concerns, issues that you have? Okay. Given that, I'd like to have a motion to approve FRC 01R041122.
I'll move to approve that resolution.
Second. We have a second. All in favor of said resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Resolution is approved. Next item here is FRC 02R041122, resolution, second amendment to the Maple Dell land acquisition agreement. Megan?
Yeah, I can do this one. So this item and then our the following item are both related to the Maple Dell project. So we did land acquisition agreements with the Hageman Group when they went and acquired all of those properties. There was one outlier property, which is the Trevor Lee property. That is the second item on here. So with these, we had 6% set cost for carrying costs, and that was, there was a discrepancy of either March 31st or May 31st for when the land acquisition agreements were, should terminate, and then the city would be responsible for paying for the land. Since the closing on the J.C. Hart project for the mixed-use concept hasn't occurred yet. So we didn't want to be caught carrying all of that land and carrying that cost. So we worked with Hageman to extend this out till September, is that right, Jennifer? And then we were able to negotiate a lower carrying cost rate, which helps us. And so for both this one and the following item, it's the same extension and then the same carrying cost, which was 1.8% instead of 6, so
And it's extended to September
first.
1st.
And to be clear, the 6% applies up to this point, up to this point, but then, the 1.8 is as of April 1st. So actually, I say up to this point through March 31st, and then as of April 1st, we get a 1.8.
Is this the one with, we still have a holdout, single home?
It's right along 116th Street, so the farthest east, so right next to Chatham Tap. And if you'll remember that site plan, I think they have, a first right on the home, but the couple doesn't want to leave there, until they go on to an assisted living facility or, whatever their next home would be. So they've been able to design a development around it. So it's nothing holding up the development. It would just be brought in eventually.
Okay. Understood.
Are these apartments or condos? I can't remember.
The project agreement was for apartments. And that was the project with, J.C. Hart and Hageman. And that's where the closing on the project hasn't happened. So we think it's gonna have to change, and, this gives everybody a little bit more time to finalize what that looks like.
Are we having any concerns with the public or the city regarding high density, apartment rentals?
So we did our housing study, through our planning commission and city council a few months ago. The vacancy rate for multifamily in Fishers is 0.9%. So at the time of the study, there were 45 apartments available in Fishers, which is really, really low. So the demand is certainly there. The misalignment, I can't even say misalignment. There is a difference in opinion of what the market is wanting or is dictating is needed and desired versus kind of general policies from some council members on whether or not those projects align. So we need more, and they're in really high demand. So what we've been doing is really being conscious of bringing projects forward, like the CRG project at 96 in Allisonville, the Highline project at 106 in Lantern, that it's part of a larger development concept, so that multifamily units, so that there is long-term sustainability. Because I think there's concerns of what are the impacts on schools, how can you ensure the long-term viability and vibrancy of those developments? So that's what we're trying to be very diligent on.
What? Be very conscientious of it. I'm sorry.
Go
No,
ahead.
please go ahead.
What type of consumer are these attracting?
So that's what's been really interesting. It's a mix of empty nesters and millennials. So there are some right out of college coming up here to find a job and work and live in the same community. But it really has not been heavy on families with young children. I think that the Depot, the last I had heard, I think 60% of their occupants were empty nesters, so 55 plus. So it really is a mixed bag. So that was a question that council had asked us during the housing study results was, well, are we planning for a different generation, or who are we creating housing for? And it truly is for everybody. So, but on the flip side of that, there's a gap, and I know this isn't part of the RDC, but there's a gap on senior housing and senior facilities and aging in place in Fishers as well. So it'll be interesting to see that if the development community decides to invest in those sort of homes, if then the demand for multifamily reduces from that generation and then gets backfilled in with millennials and Gen Z. But the trend is, even just we talked about myself and Jordan, who is our assistant director, she's 28. She is not even thinking about buying her first home, but when she is thinking about what her first home is, it is what my home is right now. So like the first generation of home buyers is not like what we were of $140 or $140,000 in Broad Ripple or Fisher. So it's a really interesting changing demographic, that it is renters by choice. And typically, those renters by choice have less children as well.
And that's the same product that's being looked at 96th and Allisonville.
It's multifamily, yes.
Yes, but which would be none of these are all gonna be apartments that rent for $2,000 a month or something like that.
Yes, yes.
I say $2,000, it may be $1,500, maybe $3,500,
Yeah.
but it's,
There's significant rent, so it's market rate. So market rate right now in Fishers is about $1.65 a square foot. And that was, even Sunblitz is getting those sort of rents right now. So I mean, it's bumping everything up. But yeah, 96 in Allisonville, those will be market rate apartments.
which is exactly what this J.C. Hart is going to be at Roy Holland Drive, 116.
That's what they have proposed, yes, market rate. Yep,
Thank you.
sure.
Any other questions, folks? Appreciate it. We still on number 6 here?
Yes, so this one would be requesting the approval of the second amendment to the land acquisition agreement for the larger group of properties. And then a separate motion for item 7, which is the one specific to what we call the Trevor Lee property.
And we got to vote on them independently, correct? Okay. Given that, may I have a motion to approve FRC 02R041122?
Motion to approve. I'll second.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Or resolution approved. Now, do we need to discuss the FRC 03R041122? Or is that all tied together?
It's the same concept of extending the deadline until September 1st, and then the interest rate for the carry cost to 1.8%.
Remind me again why we had two.
This Trevor Lee property was a holdout
That was
property, like in the middle of
Right.
development.
Okay.
So now it's been redesigned and they're going to move forward with development. Okay. So we're not going to be stuck with anything.
No. No, the only one that's left now is that far northeast corner, and we're just able to design around that.
Okay, sounds good. May I get a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
You got a second from Dan here? All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion approved, or FRC is approved. The resolution, second amendment is approved. Let's move on to FRC 04R041122, resolution Ball State Launch Fishers lease approval.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
So, as some of you may recall, the Redevelopment Commission that leases the space that Launch Fishers is in, so we lease the space to Launch Fishers. The idea, of course, at Launch Fishers is that community workspace, that there's also dedicated space in that area or in that building, and they are in charge of going out to figure out who goes into those dedicated spaces. But is subleasing from them 3,000 square feet or greater, it comes back to this group for approval. Ball State has been there for several years and wants to continue for 2 more years. Their lease is set to terminate the end of June, and they want to stay and at the same rental rate. We think it's a great collaboration to have Ball State back there, but this is just an amendment extending the term.
Any other questions, folks? Given that, may I get a motion to approve FRC 04R041122?
So moved. I'll second. To approve.
We got a Motion to approve in a second. All in favor, please say aye.
I need to recuse myself if I'm on the lost issue.
Okay, we've got a recusal. Recusing himself with that. And, so that motion is approved. Let's move on to FRC 05R041122, resolution amendment to the operations agreement at Fisher's Test Kitchen.
I'll do that one, or Jennifer, if you want to do that one too.
A little afraid the wrong thing's been added here, and I can't click on it to go to it. But that's okay, because the agenda, one, we don't even have to have them, but I do need to vote on this other one. So let's talk about this, and then we'll replace the resolution number, and I'll walk you through it.
Okay.
This, what's on here will be coming at a later meeting. But for this meeting, you all may recall that when we started Fisher's Test Kitchen, we established, Fisher's Test Kitchen as an LLC of Launch Fisher. So essentially, you had our friends at Launch Fisher's. 2 years into that, it was not perfect in how those operations, we had good results. COVID made it hard. It wasn't really about the results, but it really was for long-term sustainability and growth over there. We needed a chef who was overseeing the operation, and we had some duplication, and I think we had more people on staff than we really needed. So what we ended up doing, and this group approved, was to have Neil Brown and Greg Howe come in and operate that test kitchen and bring, still same concept, bringing in different chefs, but they would oversee it instead of Launch. Well, fast forward in that transition, we received a litigation letter because Launch Fisher's Test Kitchen had entered into like a long-term agreement with Centos for towels and napkins and, yeah, all kinds of stuff. Well, Neil and Greg have other businesses, and they had a relationship with someone else, and they're like, we can do this for a fourth of the price. They, of course, were never a party to that contract. That was actually through Fisher's Test Kitchen. So, long story short, we need to get it to go away, this agreement with Centos. The good news is, well, the bad news, we'll start there, was Centos was pretty clever, and they had a pretty tight contract. They wanted like $18,267. I called their attorney and just said, help us out here, and he did. So, they will settle and go away, because there's really about 3.5 years left on that agreement for $10,500. So I'm asking this group to approve that settlement payment, because it's with Fisher's Test Kitchen, which really doesn't have the money. They will enter into the agreement, but the other good piece of news here beyond reducing the settlement amount is we now have money coming back in through the test kitchen to the RDC, because that money is now flowing back in to this pool here. And I wish I had those numbers. Do you know roughly, Megan, what we've seen from them? No, more, I think it's been.
So it's been about 5,000 so far. We only had 2 months of payments coming in, because the rent piece of it that we have doesn't kick in until actually today.
Oh, okay.
So we've only had the 2.1% of sales, which I believe off the top of my head was about $5,000.
And the rent was, so they wanted their first 2 months of rent free, but it came across to the back end, so we didn't give them a deal on the rent, we just backloaded it. And then the other thing we did, is in making that, even though I don't love having to pay this is not less than perfect, but one thing we did is we were actually paying Neil Brown and Greg Howe to help oversee that space. Now they're paying us to be in that space. And then we also had an operations manager that we were paying roughly, or Launch was paying roughly about $80,000 a year that's gone too. So on the financial side, I think this is, as far as I'm aware, this is the last piece we're tying up, and we're on the upswing, but this does need to be taken care of. So I'm asking for approval today of a payment to settle the Centos matter for $10,500.
So that's the one that'll be 05R Or, okay, so we don't have the operations agreement.
We'll have that back
This is
next time.
This is the correct number then?
We can use that number, yes. And well, it's a resolution approving payment to Cintas. And Cintas is CINTAS, and we can use that number.
That's the resolution you emailed out.
Yeah, I remember reading.
It just doesn't have a resolution number on it.
Okay.
I just looked at it and decided.
Just the correct amount we've received so far in terms of like the percentage of sales, this is right about $3,000. It's about, right now, 29.23 is what we've received.
That's 2 months worth.
That's 2 months of the 2.1%, but the actual rent that they have is, like, I believe about, right around $5,000, so
So that
it'll be about $6,000 a month, assuming, well, based on the last 2 months of sales, which I'm assuming will go up as, you know, it gets nicer outside, people.
Right. So we're getting a portion of sales, is it?
2.1%.
So they have flat rent, and then they have 2.1% sales, and then the other piece is they have to pay, and hopefully we're collecting now, it's on their agreement.
And who do we, do you remember who we replaced Cintas with?
We were no longer party to that, so I don't know, they're using their vendor and it's their deal. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Any other questions, folks? Regarding-
Because I think they were having to pay that cost, they were having to reimburse Cintas cost.
They weren't, because they weren't even on the contract.
So they just ignored it and just.
And it really wasn't theirs to pay. I mean, and they got in touch with me immediately when they got the litigation letter. But we weren't as aware as we should have been that contract had been signed.
So if they leave, we'll still have to establish a new contract with somebody to provide those services to the facility.
If Neil Brown
Neil Brown.
and Greg Howley, we'll have to find someone to operate the whole 9 yards. But the way it's operating now is that we are no longer paying for anything over there. The money should only be coming in. Because it's almost like what we did with them, it really is almost just like a lease agreement, but it's not really a lease agreement because we have a lot of parameters written in. Go into that space and just start putting anything they want in there and shut down the idea of the different concepts. They have to have an entrepreneurial approach to it, and then the idea is that they're supposed to be bringing people into that space, start their businesses, and then help them move out. Where before, we kind of had some issues because we had contracts with each or Fisher's Test Kitchen had contracts with each individual restaurant, but yet it's hard to oversee all those restaurants. And we'd ask Neil Brown and Greg Howley come in as like the middleman to oversee them. Well, those restaurant tours did not feel like they had to be responsive to them. So now, the Neil Brown, Greg Howley goes out, they find the concepts, they bring them in, concepts, and then they still have to be spun out. So it's not really a traditional lease, but it's much more that approach, and that money should only come in and not be going out. So they have a deal, and we're a lot more out of the restaurant.
So they make whatever they're making through the groups that are in there, and that's all there.
It's all their deal, with the exception of these provisions in our agreement that talk about, we don't say, it's hard, we didn't put hard numbers on it, but like, they're not just supposed to have people in there working. They really are supposed to be like helping them form their own legal entity. So that agreement speaks to that in loose terms. Like, when they come out, if Neil and Greg are invested in it, great, that they should be minority shareholders, not majority shareholders. We didn't want just people in there working for them. That was never the concept.
So do we have a delineation of liability between the city owning Fisher's Test Kitchen and those restaurateurs that are in there?
It is literally, so now Fisher's Test Kitchen is out. You all approved some time ago. We're gonna go back and make one small change to this professional services and use agreement. Is what this group, the RDC, has with Neil and Greg's entity, and they are responsible from there on out.
Okay.
So Fisher's Test Kitchen LLC and that rolled up to launch really has nothing to do with it.
That's right.
So it's really between the RDC and those two gentlemen or their.
In their entity, that their entity is fully responsible for handling that space in the way that they can maximize, and they have every incentive, right? I mean, they're a business, and they're paying us 2.something%, but they're getting the rest of it. If they have their own contracts, we're not parties to those, we're no longer in the restaurant business.
So when we got that litigation letter, that came from Launch?
It came, yeah.
So someone at Launch,
The test kitchen, which is Launch.
Yeah.
The test kitchen has one member, Launch Fisher. And Launch, it was the Fisher's Test Kitchen that had signed this long-term lease.
and they don't have the money to pay for it, so that's where,
Well, I mean, we need money around.
Yeah.
The right way to do it is to have you all pay it.
Yeah.
And have them, because otherwise I can have them pay it and then they're gonna come to you all for the money
Yeah,
to pay it.
right.
Either way, yeah, this
Yeah.
seems more direct.
that makes sense.
And just to emphasize, I mean, the Cintas agreement is,
They're doing, whoever's replaced Cintas is doing it for
For someone else, and they're doing it, we have nothing to do with that,
a fraction.
but it's, and we like Cintas, by the way, we use Cintas here, we have lots of deals with Cintas, it's not about, any issues.
Okay.
They may be buying that stuff at, you know, at one of their Costco and providing it themselves. We just don't know, we don't care.
It's irrelevant, yeah.
As
And
long as they live up to our agreement,
Right.
it is nice to have a restaurant.
And the Cintas deal was like $18,000 a year and still had 3-something years left on it.
So,
they're
it's like
letting-
18,000 a year, I think I don't know exactly, I'd have to go back, they wanted $18,267, and that was the number of months tied to what we were gonna pay them. And I did, just so you know, I did go back, I mean, we just try to have a better deal and ask, you know,
We appreciate
Neil and
it.
Greg, like, hey, can you all pay for part of this? And like, then will you get a discount? And they just said, there's just, the cost to us, there's no way to get there. Even.
Didn't make financial sense for them.
Well, any other questions you guys have regarding this? Not ideal, but it's responsible and necessary to move forward. Well, given that, we're going to use the same FRC. May I get a motion to approve FRC 0504, 05R041122, which is the approval to settle the agreement with Cintas.
I'll move to approve.
Okay.
Recusal, we got Dan recusing. All in favor, say aye. And those opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Given that, do we have any old business that we need to discuss? Any new business?
Orange, didn't you send something out, say we were going to,
At a later meeting.
or?
Yeah, I sent out you guys all got a draft report of the RDC report that we send out every year. Like I said, it's at a later meeting, not this one, I'll have to present it to you guys and you guys formally accept it. So that's what it is. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but it's the same report you guys get from here. And there will be an additional one, probably sent out sometime next week that has essentially the same information, just laid out a little bit different.
Given nothing else to discuss, this meeting stands adjourned. We're not going to vote on it or anything like that. Full authority. Thank you guys.
Thanks, Tony.
And I- Thank you.
We're on a hot meeting.
Do you know anything about the subdivision that's going in east of Welchville Woods, whatever that is out there, past Cynthia Ann and,
Oh, and the 136, the Bel Canto project, where that was the multifamily project that was not approved. There's a development called Abbott Commons that's going on the north side of 136 across from Hunter's Run. that is going to planning commission and PUD.
Is that multifamily? Oh,
Single-family home for sale.
what price? You know?
$350 to $450.
I don't even know what that is today.
It's,
It's amazing to me that.
I don't really know, what kind of people buy those homes today. I mean,
$350 to $450 is still,
There's not much below that.
no, there isn't. I mean,
Yeah, it's hard
those, I wanna say those are starter homes, but I don't know exactly. It all sounds expensive for a starter home, but.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Which is why you get people renting at $2,000 a
Well,
month.
and I also,
It's so crazy to me that people are paying that, but I guess you can't,
but like,
there's no house to buy.
well, and part of the market
Oh, I need to just.
boom was
I'm sorry.
people were selling their house because they were profiting
Right.
so much, and then they were trying to go get an apartment, which there weren't any. And I think it just kind of continued to, yeah, we're seeing that. It's interesting though, because my wife and I bought our first house in Fishers almost 20 years ago. And I know,
So what did you spend on that?
we bought that house, it was in Abbott Commons, if you know where that's at. And it was, I think, 139.
Okay, so,
140, that was your.
Yeah, so my husband bought our very first house in Fishers before we even started dating in Fishers Point, so behind Wild Ginger. So there were townhomes and then there's single family. So we bought it for I think he bought it for 140. When we sold it 4 years ago, we ended up selling it for like 195, and we were like, they're never gonna get any money out of this house, like, no way, because it's like,
it's $250 today or something, I don't know.
it is, and they just recently sold it again, and this was like a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom ranch, like 1,500 square feet. It was great for when we just had one kid, but, yeah, for $250,000.
But if you, I mean, if you are going to have, if you're gonna think that real estate keeps, some years ago, if you bought a house for 140, it's gotta be worth 300 today, or it was a terrible investment.
Yeah.
Inflation and everything
I mean-
happening right now, like the cost of it.
Yeah, but somehow, that doesn't ever equate quite right. I don't quite know why it doesn't. You'd think it would, but it costs you $800,000 to build a house, but you can only sell the same house that's 3 years old for
It's always,
$650. I mean,
Right.
there's a big
It's rolls.
disparity, much bigger than you think.
Oh, Anderson is now.
But it's,
Yeah,
it's crazy.
the land acquisition agreement.
Talk about starter homes.
Oh, you already signed this one?
350 today.
rather than signing them in person.
Okay.
Or I can just sign it?
No, I think we need to.
Oh, no worries.
I don't know,
I just want to make sure I'm doing formally.
but those numbers right there, $1.65 times 1,200 is $2,000 a month.
I know I did that on both of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's an insane amount of money.
Sold way up in the upswing, made a ton of money on their house, and then bought it for Bill, and have added to that house. I think they're gonna do extremely well in that transaction. And we have other friends that sold their house and they're renting, and they're paying probably more than what they're.
Yeah,
Thank you for letting me use your pen.
of course.
Have it swipe.
Hang this up.
Oh, yeah.